Well, hello there, and welcome to day 15 of A Film a Day with me, Jordan Woodley. And I've decided to top my Friday off with Gerald's Game, my first Stephen King adaptation. And yeah, it was a really good film to end the week on. Confession, as I mentioned when I first started this project, I would have to work around schedules and restrictions and whatever's going on in my actual life when watching films. And this is the first time that actually came up in terms of I wasn't able to watch this film top to tail in one sitting. I actually had to work it around some work commitments, and so consequently I had to watch it in two halves, which is not the ideal situation. Mark Kermode and Simon Mayo's Wit-Attainment would be very disappointed in me, because, but further to that, I actually really regret it for this one, because being such a powerful character piece, it felt like something that should have had my full attention, and I should have, committed from beginning to end. Setting that aside, it stars Carla Gugino, who plays Jessica, who, with her husband Gerald of the Gerald's Game, played by Bruce Greenwood, they essentially have taken a weekend away to try and reignite their struggling marriage. And after some sex game, he has a heart attack and dies, and so we're faced with a film where the majority of the narrative is her handcuffed to a bed with no real hope of escape. And then it becomes this internalized character study. And I have to say, I am wildly shocked it never got any kind of award acknowledgement or anything like that at the time, because Carla Gugino, she absolutely demonstrates so much range and ability with so little around her to work with. There's something very theatrical about this, because it is very much set in one location. Now, the bounds of that are obviously played around with the fact that it's not just her by herself, well, literally it is, but, she's then also confronted by spectres of her past and her own demons, you might say. And so therefore it becomes this sort of character piece, but one where, it's not a play, she's not doing a monologue, but even still, she actually plays two different versions of herself. Three, if you include a younger version who is played by a different actress, but she plays two different variations of her character, and again, just shows so much range and ability. Stephen King is obviously a master of horror and really understands the human condition in a way that I don't know, as I mentioned in my last horror episode, you have to have a real sense of human psyche. With his house, it was very much understanding the sort of the true traumas inside a person to sort of express them through horror, and of course Stephen King knows how to do that. Or should I say Mike Flanagan, who of course wrote and directed the film version, but of course it's adapted from a Stephen King short story. But between them, they really understand how to express the horrors of the human psyche outwardly, from traumas that someone experiences within. It's funny watching the Murrowitz stories yesterday, because there are some interesting comparisons with this. As I said, Noah Baumbach, I did have issues where he was struggling when it came to female characters and sort of being able to get into the heads of female characters. And at the time, yesterday, I did say it has nothing to do with the fact that he's a man writing for women. It's just something clearly that he sort of veers away from, because comparatively, Mike Flanagan really captures the internalized experience from a female perspective, and sort of much of what's going on in her mind in a way that, speaking as a man, it I felt like it really. At no point did I feel like it was a man speaking through the woman's perspective. It really felt real and authentic. But I am willing to be, dismissed and disproven if women came forward and said, no, it's not at all a good characterization, then that's fair. But that's where I stand with it. Both films actually also explore the idea of trauma. I didn't mention yesterday about the Merowitz story, but there's a section, and it is a section focusing on one of the female characters that explores a sexual harassment that borders on sexual assault. But it's explored in a way where a character recounts an event that happened to her brothers. She explains how the colleague of her father did something deeply inappropriate. But the way that it's sort of expressed is in a very humanized, way. And actually, the film very much explores their reaction having just learned this, and the ways that they process the horror of learning this information. With this, similarly, this film really delves into molestation and sexual abuse and the repercussions of that, but from a much more authentically traumatic perspective. And the ways that someone might have a very singular experience of trauma, a one-off experience that has shockwaves and repercussions that affect all of their choices and sort of lead them from that event through to the events of the film, which I think is very powerful and evoking. And the way the film explores this is by peeling back the layers of this character, beginning from the present, back through her marriage, back further until it gets to this trauma. And I think that's a powerful, powerful exploration of character. But yeah, so consequently, I do think this is a essential character piece, and it is what I like to describe as a mature horror. There's nothing too bump in the night about it if you compare it to 2019's It Chapter 2, which was supposed to explore Stephen King's horror from the adult's perspective, compared to It Chapter 1, which was supposed to be horror from the child's perspective. That really struggled to do that, and in fact, It Chapters 1 and 2 you could almost flip to me that actually Chapter 1 really explored mature horror, and Chapter 2 actually started to roll that back in a way that didn't really work. Well, it didn't not work, but it didn't complete the what it was trying to do. Whereas Gerald's Game really does explore horror from an adult's perspective, and the things that we might find horrifying and shocking and haunting. Mike Flanagan, of course, went on to do Haunting of Hill House and Haunting of Bly Manor, which are both just phenomenal. And they, again, explore haunting, explore horror from an adult's perspective, explore trauma. So I'm absolutely not surprised that this this is the same creator as those series. Again, it's someone who I haven't had a great deal of experience of, so I would look forward to seeing more of his work. But yeah, last thing, so this was a Netflix release. After my big rant yesterday, I thought I would double down by watching another Netflix exclusive release, but that's just a tidbit. Thanks again for joining me. I will see you again tomorrow. Take care.